Good afternoon. I'm Renee.
Hi, I'm Rumi.
Welcome to our newest episode of What's Happening in Education Today.
Hi. Another big topic to discuss today.
Yeah, so today we're going to be talking about something that you've probably heard if you've been around education for a millisecond. You've heard this word, rigor. Today we're going to talk about what is rigor.
Yes.
Because it's one of those words that if you are attending any kind of professional development, any kind of planning, you're constantly being bombarded with this thing called rigor. So we're going to talk a little bit about that today.
Interestingly enough, you're going to hear it, but you're not going to get a complete definition. It's assumed that we already know what it is.
Right. So as we were looking into this stuff, and as I was looking around on the computer and thinking about all the professional developments and things that we've gone to in the past and that we're going to right now and in the future, it was interesting to me that many of these conferences even have the word rigor in their titles.
Yes.
Or many of the classes that you can attend are centered around the word rigor. And even with all of us being bombarded with that all the time, I still say that we don't really understand what rigor actually is.
Agreed.
I attended a conference just a couple of weeks ago that focused a lot on rigor. As soon as school was out, we have a conference that's called RRR, and one of those R stands for rigor. But I still feel like most of us really don't have a clear understanding of what rigor is. What do you think about that?
Same position. I mean, it's still, because it's not completely defined and clearly defined in the education settings, we're using it a lot, and everybody assuming, oh, we know what it is, and yet it's not applied the correct way, or it depends of the person that it's with you or it's talking about to define the word. Same thing. I spent the whole last year doing a rigor readiness planning, and yet nobody can tell you exactly what the rigor is in this planning.
So I found three specific definitions, three different researchers, three different people that are very well known in education if you're into reading that kind of thing. And I'm going to read all three different definitions and just listen to how similar and different they are. So the first one says rigor is the result of work that challenges students' thinking in new and interesting ways. It occurs when they are encouraged toward a sophisticated understanding of fundamental ideas and are driven by curiosity to discover what they don't know. And that's the Spansnick 2015. Another one says rigor is creating an environment in which each student is expected to learn at high student expectations. Student demonstrates learning at high levels, and that's Blackburn 2013. And the last one that I'm going to read says rigor is a quality of instruction that requires students to construct meaning and impose structure on situations rather than to expect to find them already apparent, and that's Resnick from 1987. So there's three different interpretations of what rigor is. Now, with that having been said, do we still know what rigor is? And I would continue to say no. Exactly. So, those are three very highfalutin people in education who have written books and done the research about rigor in education, and their definitions are three very different definitions. So I contend that maybe we can agree that rigor is having high expectations for all students and finding challenging ways for those students to reach those goals. To me, that's an easier way to understand it, because at the end of the day, the bottom line is we want them to be able to think past what it is that we taught them.
Yep.
So in any situation they might find themselves in, they are able to look at that situation, analyze it, synthesize, come back and recall the information that they have gotten in the past and make that work with whatever the situation is now. And
to
that's
solve
how,
a problem.
to solve the problem. And that's how I look at rigor. To me, that's not all of that. Or maybe it is, and I just need it to be broken down simplistically.
Thank you. So here is where I'm struggling with that. All of these words, and it comes from the different authors and investigators in educational field. It's just so many words to tell me that I have to challenge my kids and their assumptions of what they know and how they can apply it. So I struggle with that so much because my mind as a mathematician does not work with so many words.
Mm-hmm.
When you make it kind of more, I don't want to say simplistic, but simple, I will understand what you're telling me. First of all, immediately the reaction is it's not more difficult, which mistakenly it's taken in account of somebody that doesn't understand the rigor completely, comes to you and says, oh, that's not difficult enough. What do you mean? It's not supposed to be that much of a difficulty if you kids already have the background and the knowledge to solve a specific problem. It challenges the way that they're doing it. And you cannot judge the way that they're doing it. The end result is where it comes forward.
And I think we're talking about this, and the reason why we're talking about it, because one of the reasons why it's so important in our state, in our district, will be evaluated on how rigorous our plans are.
Yes.
That's part of our evaluation system, and it clearly says in order to get distinguished in instructional planning, you have to have rigorous and measurable goals aligned to the state content standard. So they put it right there in black and white. So we need to know what does that actually mean? What does rigorous actually mean? So she kind of already said it. One thing we want to make clear, that rigor does not mean more work and harder work. That's clearly not what it doesn't mean. So rather than give 10 problems, I'm going to give you 25 problems.
Yes.
That's not
That's not the rigor.
If I'm doing addition of 3-digit numbers with regrouping, whatever the content happens to be, I give you 4 problems today and I want to make it more rigorous does not mean I give you 10 problems tomorrow. Making it more rigorous may mean that I take the addition situation and maybe put it in a problem that is an open-ended question, and you have to come up with some ways to solve that problem. That's making it more rigorous, and I can do that in one problem and get everything I need, and I don't have to give you 20 of said problems to see that you have the content. And I think that's the biggest misnomer that we have when we talk about rigor, is we think, oh, I got to give you more work, and like you said earlier, I got to make it uber hard, to prove or to make you engage in some thinking to do it. And that's not really the case. That's not it at all.
It will never going to be. More work does not mean more rigor. You can apply the rigor just by one problem, and I'm talking problem because my background is math and science. With one problem, you can reach the rigor because you straightforward, challenging. Here it is. Now you need to figure out how to solve that using your background knowledge. The interesting part is, and I'm going to be honest, for years I struggled with, because I had to figure out exactly what it is. How do you put it in plan? How much is it? What is it, the challenging problem? Until a teacher came to me, kind of laughed, and said, no, it's not that difficult. And I'm going to use your example of addition because that teacher was very specific. When you do special groups in order of operation, when it's, I went to the mall and I bought shoes and then I bought a shirt, you're subtracting for the money, but the knowledge that the shoes and the t-shirt, it's a special group and they can be added, it's where the rigor hits. So that was very interesting to me. It kind of was a moment, oh, hold on. So it's the applying of the knowledge to the real life and how you do it in real life. That was an interesting moment for me. It's the turning point for me.
And that's a good example. And another thing that I often think about when I'm thinking about rigor is you have to understand that rigor is expected of all children, and it doesn't matter the level of the student. So the lowest student in your class should be getting rigorous work.
Yes.
And again, I have to emphasize that doesn't mean harder work. It means work on his or her level that causes them to think or to give them a challenge. And I think maybe for some of us, challenge versus hard, there's a thin line right there. Challenging and being too hard, there's a thin line. Because I can have something that's challenging for this student, but it has to be on that student's level. Okay?
Yes.
And that's the difference. I'm just not going to give that kid something that's way above their level and call it rigorous because they don't know how to do it.
And they will never do it.
Exactly. They're not going to do it. They're going to rebel. You're going to have some issues. It has to be within the realm of that student's understanding, but at the same time, it has to cause them to be challenged. I can remember, and Rumi could probably attest to this, one of the things that I used to enjoy doing in my classroom, when I had a classroom, was in science, was giving them challenging projects.
Yes.
And it can't just be any project, but I would give them challenging projects depending upon the content that we were doing. And one of the ones that I enjoyed the most, and this particular one stands out, and she knows the student very well because she works specifically with them. We had one student who was autistic and kind of nonverbal. He was a little bit nonverbal. And one of the projects that I would give my students throughout the year is they would have to construct a working simple machine from recyclables. And basically it was cardboard. I gave them tape, maybe some paper clips, rubber bands, and that was pretty much it. And they had to come up with a plan.
Yes.
And they had to have a simple machine that actually worked. It had to do something. And this one particular student, who we couldn't get to do much of anything else, he just thrived at this because this was his thing. And did I put him in a group that only had SPED students? No. He was in a group that had all level of students, and he was able to have conversations with them and sometimes even take the conversation over. He was very almost to the point of being I don't know, he would take over the whole project.
Yes.
And he, did all the specifications. He fussed at people when they didn't cut the right length or the right width or, whatever it was that they were doing. And they created, it was an elevator.
It was an elevator.
It was an elevator that
that
you could put something in and actually twist something and it would raise the thing up. And he was just really into this. And it was amazing to us because he was non-communicative. I had to get the speech teacher involved and everything to say, okay, y'all say he doesn't talk. I need you to come in when he's doing this so that you can hear him talk. Because he would be going in on the people in his group if he felt like they weren't doing it. To me, that was rigorous for everybody in the group because they had to figure out how to communicate with him without making him lose it altogether. And he, because the whole building part was a strength for him, he had to be able to work with them and let them actually do part of the project so that they could all be successful in the end. To me, that was rigorous, and it made them think about simple machines outside of their little realm.
Plus, they built the machine, which was the goal of the project, and it was a working machine. And I remember specifically that very, very nice because I was attached to this kid, And in that point, I was kind of getting to the point of being overprotective of him. And suddenly, when he got to that, and he's completely out of the box for us thinking, and communication skills made us rethink, challenge our own knowledge, and adapt to solving the problem with him. Plus, it was very interesting that he came up with ideas that we did not thought about it.
Exactly.
But oh my God! So yes, completely agree with you. That was the point. The goal was met. There was not specific lower expectations on making it even simple because of him. And the challenge was there.
Right.
You will have to get to the goal, and you will have to work as a team no matter what. They did it.
They did it, and they did it perfectly. And it was a really good, it was probably one of the better ones that I've seen throughout the years, because he was very precise. He wanted it measured exactly, just everything. So it caused his group to even have to step up with, if they wanted to do it kind of slovenly, he wasn't about to let that happen. So it worked out perfectly. So when you're thinking of rigor, adding rigor to your lessons, think about those things. You want to make it challenging, but it has to be on the level of the students, and you want to make it real world. All right? Because at the end of the day, they're going to leave us and go out into the real world, and our goal is to get them to a place where they can synthesize and be able to go out there, analyze, synthesize, and go out there and recall and put all that stuff together and live in this world. So we hope that helps you to understand rigor a little more, so that when you are doing your planning, you're thinking, how is this going to challenge my students? So I found a couple of websites, and I'm going to go ahead and drop those links into the description box after this is over, that you can look these up, because there's a lot of different strategies that you can use to add rigor to your lessons. But we wanted to kind of segue into, because we've kind of talked about it a little bit, the difference between differentiation and scaffolding, because those are some things that are very important when you're trying to add rigor into your lesson. And you have to know the difference, because this is another set of terms that are used in education that are often misunderstood or used interchangeably. And again, there's a thin line between differentiation and scaffolding. And sometimes some of the things that you may do overlap.
Exactly.
They overlap each other. But let's talk a little bit about what's the difference between differentiation and scaffolding.
Well, the differentiation, it's meeting the individual student needs on their level. Whatever they are, you're working with that, because it's an individual approach. So it's the point where the teacher adapts the work at the level of the student. And differentiation occurs in a small group. Why in a small group? Because it's exactly where you're working individually with the kids. Does not mean that if you're in a model where the small group is not applied, you cannot make a differentiation for specific kids. You can do that, but majority of the times it's in small groups. Scaffolding, though.
Before she let me just throw this in here, since we're talking about rigor, and I just want to reiterate this. When we're talking about differentiation, she's already explained that it's done in a small group. This is individualized. But again, the rigor still should be there. It still should be challenging for the student. When you're differentiating, it still should be challenging for the student. And we often hear the example of, you give the higher reading students this passage, you give the lower reading students, this really soft passage, and then you don't expect them to do the same kind of activities. That's really not what you're supposed to do. You're really supposed to expect them to be able to do the same activity regardless of the level of the passage. If I am synthesizing this passage looking for context clues or whatever it is, I don't teach reading, I teach math and science. But if that's what they happen to be doing, I still expect my lower readers to be able to do it from the passage that they have, the same as I expect my older or my higher readers to do with their passage. It doesn't mean that they're lessons are, as we say, dumbed down.
No.
The rigor still should be there.
No. And as an example, we use a specific program in science which does that in a very interesting way, going for the reading part, which me neither, but it's exactly the same passage. What is different in the passage is the reading level.
Mm-hmm.
So here's your differentiation. I expect you to look at this and answer the activity underneath and do that. Where I'm differentiating and I'm meeting you at your level, it's your reading level.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the expectation is the same. You're just giving a help on where the level of the kid is. Your help adapts to the individual need of the kid, not to the goal,
right?
The end goal,
right? If you're familiar with Kid Biz, most states, a lot of states do Kid Biz. So if you're familiar with Kid Biz, it gives your student nonfiction passages to read according to their lexile number. That's a perfect example of it's differentiated. However, the rigor is still there because it's the same passage or the same content, I should say. It's the same content, but it is according to that student's specific lexile, and they're all expected to be able to answer the questions and do the quiz after they've read the passage. So when you're thinking differentiation, be thinking they still have to have the same content and do the same lesson, so to speak, but it's just leveled for that specific kid.
So in math, where my forte is, sometimes it's a step like, okay, it's the differentiation, so I'm going to make the problem easier. Where it goes is, it's not that I'm assuming that the kid cannot do it. I'm assuming that they can get to the end goal, but they need help. So where it gets to the differentiation, it's, I'm not making the problem easier. I'm giving you manipulatives. And I'm giving you materials where you can go and check, but my expectation is still the same. You are going to solve this problem in the back. You're going to get. It will take you a little more time. You are not in the abstract model right now. You still need your manipulatives. You still need your multiplication tables, whatever it is. That's okay for me. This is my help for me to get you to the level where I need you to be, and it's the same rigor expectations for everybody.
And then throw an example out there for science. If you're familiar with writing in science, some of us are doing writing in science. Whereas my higher writers can write up an observation from an experiment without my assistance, whereas my lower students might need a stem, or they might need a few stems where they just fill in a few words.
Or a graphic organizer.
Or graphic organizer, or any of those things that they could use for their level to get to the same goal. My goal is I want you to have some kind of observation written about what we've done in the lab. So all those are good ways to make sure your kid gets the differentiation, but to make sure that the rigor is there and everybody comes to the same conclusion, so to speak. So that's differentiation. So we're going to move on to scaffolding.
Well, scaffolding is the way that you adapt to the whole group. The scaffolding does not take in account the individual needs of the kids. It takes in account the whole group. And once again, no, it pertains more to the teacher, not to the kids. So if you start your lesson and suddenly you have 20 pair of eyes looking at you like,
what are you
talking about? You need to stop. And now you start thinking how to scaffold the information that you're giving to get to the point of the group. Because that means it's not that one kid did not understand and it needs a little bit of help with two kids. It means the level that you're giving it, it's not for the group. The group, it's not there. So you start going down, down, down until you meet the level. And then from that level, slowly go up. And the better example for that is the slow release,
gradual release.
the gradual release. So where you start, okay, so here it is, here's what I'm doing, and usually start at the basic level. And then you go, now we're doing it together because I'm scaffolding for the group, and I'm going to expect the group to follow me or ask me questions, so I'm asking the questions. And then we're going to the individual work where it's a you do, where that's without my help, so you are not helping the scaffolding part. It's going away. Now you're going into differentiation to check individual kids.
And another way that you can think about scaffolding also is, I know back in the day, the big thing was to do a KWL.
True.
It was to do, basically all you're trying to do is, like she said, if you start some content and you look at those little eyes and they're all into the sea of vastness of, I don't know what you're talking about, then immediately you know that I need to back up, I need to bring up some prior knowledge to connect this to, so that they can grasp what it is I'm trying to give them. So pretty much scaffolding can be done for a myriad of reasons.
Yes.
You know, you might know going into this, okay, this content, the way that I'm supposed to present it, this is going to be a challenge because I already know. And let's just face it, some of the stuff that they have us teach at the level that they have us teach it, you go in the door already knowing these kids are not ready for this. They're not developmentally ready for this.
No.
Or you know that, you know, based upon the content that they got prior to coming to you, they're not ready for this. Or if you know your clientele, experience-wise, they might not be ready for this. Sometimes you go in the door knowing, okay, they're not going to be prepared for this. So you have to already have things in place to help bring up some prior knowledge and give them something to hook this new information to, so that you can go on about your way. So there are many ways that you can scaffold. There's not like one tried and true way that you can do this and this is gonna scaffold it for you.
There is no recipe for it.
No, there's no recipe.
It will be adapted to your group and where your group is in that moment. And it's very interesting, and I was listening to Vinay, and it's something that she said that kind of zooms up where the scaffolding is. You will have to teach things that are not of the level of the kids, or they do not have any relevance for life. So most probably those kids have not even seen, will never see it. Case in point, personal finance literacy.
That was right about. That was about
checks. At this point in life, first of all, if you're an elementary teacher, how many of your kids have seen checks?
Right.
Number one. Number two, by the time it becomes relevant for them, checks will be out of use. As of right now, we use more payment online and debit cards or credit cards. So teaching checks is something so far away from them. So now you have to think, okay, how do I present this to get to the level of the group which most probably doesn't have idea what it is? And how does that project in real life? A majority of the time you're going to be, probably grandma's using checks, but other than that, So there are specific things. There's one more for me, just for me, if there is some kind of use. When we present data to the kids and we're teaching them a STEM and leave data table, no application in real life whatsoever for them, even for us. So you have to figure out, okay, I'm starting on zero here. How do I start building that? And how do I get to the rigor? Because that I'm differentiating and scaffolding does not mean I'm not reaching the rigor, the higher level. But how do I put this knowledge in connection to the rigor? So out of the box thinking, it's a higher level of thinking. Presenting something that they most probably have never seen, so I cannot connect to the prior knowledge of, they most probably have never gone to see outside the classroom either. What does it connect to? and your only safe place will be place value. So go back to it and figure out what to do.
Yeah. So to sum it kind of all up, rigor does not mean more work, and it does not mean make it harder. For us as teachers, I think as we're formulating our lessons, we just have to be in position to think about what's going to make this lesson challenging for all of my students. What's going to make them think about something other than just this specific content? Or I guess a better way to say that is, how can I formulate this lesson so that the end goal is that they can walk out into the world and use this? That's the bottom line. That's basically what the rigor should be about. How are they going to be able to be a thinker and not just a test taker when they walk out into the real world to use this information? Because how many times, even when we were in school, how many times did we say, I don't know why we have to learn this. Nobody ever's going to use, I'm never going to use this again for the rest of my life. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we've said it. Even us, we've said it. There are many times in algebra. True. Algebra 2. Trigonometry. What I said. When am I ever using this again? When I actually do. Now that I really understand what algebra is. So that's the importance of the rigor, because I want my students to be able to walk out into the real world and apply this knowledge, even if they don't know that that's what they're doing in the moment. An example that I often give my students is going grocery shopping, because all of them have experience with going to the store, whether it be by themselves, their parents sending them, they're just going to the candy store, the corner store, to the gas station to get, some candy or whatever. They all have that experience. So I often say, when you're in the grocery store, and especially if you're going with your parents to buy groceries for the week or 2 weeks or whatever, how many times do you see your parents pull out a piece of paper and they say, oh, I'm going to get 5 cans of peas or beans or whatever, and they sit there and then they start trying to add all these and make ticks and dots and all that kind of thing and add it up while they're standing there in the store. Yes, some people pull out a phone and use calculators, but that's kind of rare. You don't see a lot of those. You're seriously budgeted people. You will see them out, calculating everything. But for most of us, we're gonna go in there, look at that price, and say, I need 3 of these. If I get 3, it's gonna be about this much. I have about this much in my pocket. This is about how, and they're doing all that stuff in their head. And there's your rounding and estimation. And kids are amazed when I tell them, when you go to the grocery store with your parents, do you think that they're literally standing there doing ticks and dots to figure out how many cans of peas can I get, how much meat can I get, how much milk can I get, because they know how much money they have when they get to the cash register and whether or not they're going to have enough to cover the stuff that's in that basket. So when you're hollering, I want Fruity Pebbles and I want this and I want that, and they're saying, no, it's because they're doing all that math in their head. And that's the point of us learning how to estimate and round and do all those things so that we won't be embarrassed when we get to the cashier and she says it's $25 and you only have 20. And you're looking at her or him and they're looking back at you and we're at a stalemate. So to me, going through that whole thing may take some time away from the actual lesson that I'm supposed to be doing, but setting them up like that gives them a reason to want to learn this content, and then it gives them a reason to know what to do, or gives them know what to do when they walk out into the real world. And they can get in their head, oh, this is estimating and rounding, and I might need this.
No, and here's where algebra hits. Oh, you have to pay taxes, and it's not in the price.
Right.
Surprise.
Yeah.
So this is where I stand as a teacher, and how it makes easier for me to get the rigor part of the lesson plans. I always think, how is this presented in real life? It doesn't matter what it is. Obviously, it's a little bit easier when it comes to applying of mathematics because you can immediately connect it to real life money. Spending, crossing the street when it comes to straight lines and parallel. So it's a little bit easier to apply. That does not mean that it's not the same thing with reading and understanding, because guess what? You have to read the things and know what people are asking you in a written form to understand what you have to do. Case in point, instructions from IKEA. You know, it's not a very easy thing to do. Especially when you assume you know what you asked to do and you never read the instructions. But that's the application in real life. And here where the challenge comes to, okay, can you solve that with a certain thing? For example, if I'm giving you a problem of buying dog food, well, here is $100 bill, but I need 20 back because so now they have to figure out what to do and how to do it, and this is the rigor. You are challenging them to figure out and solve a problem with everything that they know and apply it in real life. That's how I approach it. Does not mean that I'm not adapting. Yes, I'm adapting. Instead of going to the grocery stores, we're going on Amazon. It's the world that they're living to right now. Most things are bought on Amazon and eBay. Well, send them to eBay to figure out what they can buy with $20. Dollars, sorry. So that's the point of rigor. And once again, I want to say before that you have to think that rigor, it's not making it more difficult. It's making it challenging on their level. Then it's rigor is for everybody. And I want to say that again. Rigor is for everybody. That includes our very special friends and special kids. Because guess what? They will have to go and face the real world too. Like it or not, we are going to make special provisions for them. Actually, we have a federal law for that. But either way, they will have to face the world. So they will have to be prepared for that in a certain level. Our very, very high kids, the simple fact that you let them choose how to get to a knowledge, it's a rigor. Because they have to make the choosing. So the rigor is for everybody. The differentiation is how I'm going to help that exact kid where they are. Because let's be clear, not all of the kids learn on the same level and in the same way. We wish we think it is. It's not. That's why when you teach and you're desperate because the kid is not getting it, and please explain to your partner how it is, and that other kid says something and in 3 minutes they're done and they're good. Because we assume what we're doing is, but you have to figure out the level. So partner work, it's a good thing when it comes to that.
And she said something that she said something that just struck a chord in me, to also understand when you were talking about rigor. And I challenge, all of our fellow educators with this. One, rigor does not have to be boring. Rigor can be fun. So it could be something that the kids enjoy. They don't have to know that this is rigorous. There's nowhere where we have to put in our objective that today you're going to do something rigorous, blah, 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 blah. They don't have to know. You have to know. So it could be something that's fun. They don't even have to know. So rigor can be enjoyable for the students. Okay, that's number one. And then number two, don't overthink it. Don't overthink it. Because some of the most simple things that you do can be rigorous. And we're looking at it as, again, get out of the mindset that it has to be difficult. And we didn't earlier talk about our GT students. They still have to have rigor. You can still challenge them without making it uber hard. It doesn't necessarily have to be uber hard. It just has to be challenging. So remember them. When we're in these mixed abilities classes, which most of us are in these mixed ability classes, there has to be something that's going to challenge them. And then the last thing I think I want to throw in there is that letting students know that there's more than one way to get to an answer. There's more than one way to skin. What's the saying? Skin a whatever. Skin whatever you're trying to skin. There's more than one way to do it. And allowing students to be able to, you do it your way, I'm going to do it my way, as long as we come to the same end point. Make students comfortable with that. And Number Talks have shown me how that works. Because watching how different students get to the same outcome can be like it can be crazy, because I'm thinking, you did all of that just to get here, whereas I might have done 1, 2, 3. You may have done 1, 2, A, Z, and then 3, but we still got to the same outcome, and it's okay. And I know in our curriculums they expect us to teach specific strategies, but along with those specific strategies, if a student just doesn't get those strategies, but they have a way that works for their process to get to the end point, and they can explain it to you, and it makes perfect sense, and it works every single time. The key is it has to work every single time. Now they can't just come up with some hogwash that just works this time and it doesn't work that time. It has to work every single time. If it works for them every single time and they're getting to the right outcome, let it go. You're going to run into those students if you haven't already. We have those students who, in math, will never, I don't care what you say, they're never going to show their work. And they're going to have every problem correct.
Yes.
And they can tell you exactly how they did it, and the process that they go to, they can get it every single time, but they're never going to write it down.
No.
Which ditch do you want to die in? You want to die in the you got to show your work or you're going to fail ditch? Or as long as you can come up here and explain to me how you got this and it works for you every single time, I'm good. You choose the ditch you want to die in. Our bottom line is rigor does not have to be difficult.
Nope.
You just got to think about it.
And you will have to get UPs with, because that's the thing with rigor. And that's probably the only thing that every single one of the investigators and the big names would. It doesn't matter how the kids are getting there. They just have to get there. Yeah. So you as a teacher have to let go of that thing. If it's not that strategy, it's not no. I actually, up until today, I'm using 2 different strategies that came up from my kids for 2 different students. One for conversion and using conversion. And I was looking at the kid and he was ready in exactly half of a minute. I'm like, how do you do that? And he told me how to, oh my God, it's a lot easier. And it works back and forward. It works every single time. I'm using it today. And it came from a kid. But as a teacher, you need to understand that when it comes to rigor, it doesn't matter how the kids got there to the end goal. They did it. You just have to make the challenge there. And when I'm saying the challenge, and this is very interesting because usually we kind of get to the kids that needs to achieve the part and leave our higher kids on. But here is the thing. If you hire kids, have the challenge to make a news program about weather using the technology, you already hit the rigor because that's in their real work. YouTube, they already use it. So now the challenge is for them how to prepare the program, the script, and give the knowledge to the other kids. Done. And they have to work in team, as a team, which is very interesting because we're so in focus of we are going to gather to the individual student, not against it, let me be clear, yes, but we stop teaching the kids how to work in team. And guess how corporate America works?
In teams.
In teams.
And you talk to some corporate people, and we're going way off the script
Yeah.
here, but you talk to some corporate America people now, they'll tell you that's one of the hardest things that they have going against them right now as they're hiring new applicants are those people that don't know how to work with the team and don't know how to problem solve. They don't know how to sit down, come up with a plan, work that plan. If it doesn't work, tweak it and come up with some other ways to do it. That's one of the hardest things that they're having in corporate America now. So we need to be thinking about that because, again, we're preparing these students to walk out there and get a job.
Yes.
Yeah. So we're down to like our last couple of minutes, and I think, do we need to say anything else? I think you might get it.
Yep.
And if you don't, go ahead and leave us a comment or a question, and we will try to answer it in the near future. And until then, thank you for watching. Have a good one.
Thank you. See you next time. Bye.